just going to do Cortazar? Okay, good. And Ms. Dunstan? Ms. Dunstan? Ms. Eppheimer. That's Ms. Okay, Ms. Eppheimer. Got you. Okay. Ms. Fusco. Oh, Ms. Fusco, could I see you after class, please? Thank you. Oh, Ms. Gartner. Ms. Gartner. Ms. Kisner. Ms. Kratz. There's Ms. Kratz. Ms. Crumble. Leonard. Gallus. Oh, whoopsie doodle. Forgot to mention that. Okay, Ms. Morgan. Oh, I think Ms. Morgan's not. She's not coming. Okay. Mr. Paniagua, Ms. Rentschler, Ms. Raya, Ms. Swartztrauber, no. Mr. Slacktish, Mr. Deckert, Mr. Marino. Okay. All right. Okay. Just to let you know, I put the video from CBS News. I put a link on Blackboard so you can find it. There's a link to the website with the video. So if you go under class recordings and scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll find the link there. I did upload it to the Google Drive account. And Google Drive is like showing it's there because it's showing me like the ribbon above it showing like suggested stuff. I don't know why it's suggesting me stuff from my own Google Drive. I have no idea, but there's no way to get rid of it. But it's showing the video is there. I uploaded it to Google Drive, but I can't find out where it is. I don't know where it is. It might be in one of the folders hiding somewhere, but I just uploaded it to no folder. It should just be there. So anyways, in lieu of that, until I can figure that one out, I put a link to the web page so you can go and watch it. And be sure, if you do go and watch the web page, well, I would recommend that you do if you didn't take notes on it. Remember, depending on which browser you have, you might have to give it permission to play video or permission to play audio, just so you know. So if you're trying to watch it and no video is playing, or it's playing but there's no sound, look at the upper right-hand corner of your browser, like on Google Chrome, they'll have a symbol that will usually show, or will show like a microphone with a red line through it or something like that. So just be aware of that, okay? I just want to make a couple brief comments on Zen, since so many people went to the Zen meditation that's offered here at Misericordia, because Zen is part of Buddhism. It's a technique. It's a practice very much focused on meditation, and you can see that in the name, Zen. The word Zen, actually, if you follow it through, it goes all the way back to Sanskrit, our old buddy Sanskrit from Hinduism. Remember that the Buddha was a Hindu. That actually might be a good true-false question on the final exam, you know, because he was from India, yeah? So he was technically a Hindu. He was of India. However, as you should know by now, he rejected some of the ideas of Indian religion and went on his own path. And as we also know from Hinduism, meditation is a big part of Hinduism, and it also was a big part of Buddhism and the Buddhist practice. And so dhyana in Sanskrit is often translated as meditation, but the literal meaning is simply to see or to look at something. To see or to look at something. And that's kind of like what they're getting at with meditation. Yes, in Hinduism, we talked about it, it wants you to see what is the true reality of the world, what is beyond the illusion, I say. Meditation, it's often translated simply as meditation. but the word literally means to see something. You want to see reality. You want to go beyond the illusion to realize that you and Brahman, ultimate reality, are really one and the same. For the Buddha, it's to realize that reality is really impermanent. It's changing all the time. There's no stability to it. And the illusion is that we think there is stability when there really is none. And meditation helps you to realize that. So in both religions, meditation is trying to get you to realize something. It's not just a practice for the sake of practice, to calm you down or help you focus. There's a purpose to it. So dhyana, to see or look at, and then dhyana becomes chan, and I'm using the old Wade Giles spelling here. I like the traditional spelling, but it's basically the same. You'll see it spelled like this without the apostrophe. Same thing, chan, which means meditation. So dhyana or dhyan, sometimes the A is silent at the end, becomes chan, becomes in Japan, Zen. So that's how they pronounce it. And so I got this picture. This guru has a webpage. Some guru, just any guru, and he had this webpage. I thought this was a kind of cool map to kind of show the connections. From India, Buddhism kind of makes its way up through China and then across to Japan. This is a little bit ambiguous here. This is the Korean Peninsula. We have South Korea and North Korea today. And the footsteps probably should go through Korea, but it's a touchy subject. There's a lot of, because of World War II and just other historical reasons, there are tensions between Korea and Japan about historical issues. And, the Japanese, I shouldn't be so general, but the view is a lot that we didn't get nothing from nowhere. Japan, that Japan kind of started up things on their own, came up with their own ideas. But in the point of fact, geographically, given how the Korean Peninsula is so close to Japan, a lot of the ideas that come from China came down into Japan through Korea. And that can be a bone of contention between Japanese and Korean scholars. Japanese scholars like to think that everything kind of developed natively in Japan, and Korean scholars like to, want their, kind of like their due, want the acknowledgement that, hey, we contributed to your culture. So that's probably how it got there, through Korean Buddhism, this practice of meditation. One thing I want to add that I forgot to add in the last class, the number of Buddhists in the world. I don't think I mentioned this, but as of around 10 years ago, the number of Buddhists in the world is believed to be, as you know, things are constantly changing. Yes, not permanent. Not permanent, Ms. Rentschler, no. 376 million Buddhists in the world, but probably, that's like over 10 years ago. It's probably more than that. I would assume it's approaching 400 million, around 400 million. But as of 2009, it's 376 million. So meditation, even the name, forms part of this variety of Buddhism. So meditation is a significant aspect. As you probably know, it gets a lot of attention in Zen Buddhism, the practice of meditation. And there are very strict rules. There are all sorts of rules about how you have to meditate. You can't just do it. You have to do it in a certain way. When did Buddhism come, or at least this form of Buddhism, come to Japan? Around the 1100s AD, so a little under 1,000 years ago, or 900 years ago, is when Buddhism came to Japan and developed into this kind of native variety of Buddhism called Zen. It's very focused on meditation, as I said, but it's also focused on aids to meditation, things to help you meditate, and aids in meditating, things to meditate on. And one of the most distinctive aspects that developed within well, it didn't just develop within Zen Buddhism, but Zen Buddhism, I think, maybe took it to an art form, was the use of the Quan, the Quan. Sometimes you hear people pronounce this cone because of our Western mind, you know, you think like road, O-A has an O sound. No, it's koan, koan. You read it as it's spelled. And koans are riddle speech. They're riddle speech, they're riddles. They are puzzling statements. They are meant to blow apart your mind, blow apart the stability of rational thinking, to get the mind beyond rational, conventional conceptions of normal, of what the world is. So teachers of Zen will, if you're a student of a teacher of Zen, will frequently in that practice give these little riddle statements to the student to then ponder. And these are kind of an introduction or a springboard for the student to start realizing that the rational thought that you think is there is really without purpose or function. It's, you know, it has no basis for existing. It seems reasonable to you, but the rational aspect is really just an illusion, as are all things, because words can mean different things. They have different meanings. The meanings can change over time. Even the words that you use or the concepts that you think are so set in stone are not really set in stone. So here's a famous one you might have heard when you were growing up, and it actually is a Quan. It is a legitimate Quan. It comes from Zen Buddhism. It comes from this monk, this Zen master named Hakuin, who died in 1769. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Okay. What is it? Well, I get, you know, the first instinct you have, and that a student might have, would be to think about it rationally. Okay. Well, okay, I'll do one hand clapping. I'll try it. I'll you know, I won't do this. I'll just do the one hand. Oh, okay. So it moves the air. There's really no sound. So nothing. You know, the sound is nothing. Okay. And so the student will bring that answer to the master, and the master will, you know, slap the student around a bit, say, no, that's not right. Go back and think about it. But I thought I had the answer, master. You know, no, you don't have the answer. And, you know, so, but the reason, I mean, it's not, there really is no answer to a Quan. The Quan is a technique. It's not something to be thought of rationally. You try to think about it rationally, but it's supposed to, again, like the meditation practice itself, kind of lead you through, as you go through the rationalizations of what the Quan might mean or what its answer might be, you kind of realize there is no answer, and none of the answers I've come up with is sufficient to answer it. So they are all impermanent and empty of real existence. That's kind of like what they're trying to get at with Quans. And there are many, many of them. I just gave this one because you might have heard of it before and not know what its origin is. And you might think it was just a little joke that somebody made up, but it's not. The Quan wants to show you that even with rational thought, you're trying to hang on to something. You're assuming that there's a permanent self there that is having these thoughts that are all connected and make sense. But by using Quans, using this riddle speech as something to meditate on, it shows you that you can't, there's nothing to hang on to as the source of rational thought. Nothing is really there underlying those thoughts. One final thing I wanted to mention about Zen that you might not think of and you might not really associate with Buddhism, but because there are two forms of Zen. There's one that's a nice kind, but there's one that's actually quite a violent kind. And I kind of implied this when I said, you know, the student tries to think of the answer to the Quan, comes back to the master, says, this is the answer, master, and the master slaps him around. I wasn't being facetious there. That stuff happens. The Zen masters, not in all forms of Zen, as I said, there are two forms, but in the more violent kind, or I should say the violent kind, the master has what is called a wisdom stick. Think of like a nun with a ruler. You ever hear the jokes about, oh yeah, you go to Catholic school and the nuns beat you up with a ruler? Which makes no sense to me because there are no nuns in Catholic schools anymore. Hardly any, but there used to be many. And I don't know, my mom went to school then. She didn't get beaten with a ruler, so who knows? But that seems to be the old canard about going to Catholic school. But in Zen, it actually happens. It's part of the process. By applying pain to the student through the wisdom stick, like hitting the student, knocking him on the head, poking him, doing stuff like that, you are kind of moving him towards a breaking point, like a catharsis, you know, as they call it in psychology. You're kind of like pushing the person to his limits of, I can't take this anymore, and then, ta-da! Oh, now I realize. All is one, and yet all is not one. Yeah? It's like, thank you, Master, and your wisdom stick. Other things they'll do is try to use the forcefulness of energy. So, you know, the Zen Master will go up to the student when the student is meditating. You know how some of you went to the Zen, you know, you're there, you're seated, or you're in the lotus position, you're meditating, and the Zen Master will sneak up and go, oh! And yell at the student, trying to startle him, hoping that by startling the student will like immediately enter enlightenment. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it happens. There have been stories of some people who have just immediately entered into enlightenment through shock, but usually it doesn't happen. All right? This is the form of Zen called Rinzai, in case you're wondering. So I'm not sure in the modern world how much they apply these violent tactics anymore, but it is part of their historical practice. Yelling at your students, screaming at your students, slapping them, hitting them, doing all sorts of things. Ah, yes. Zen is fun. Oh, and this is a picture of Hakuin that he drew of himself. So I'm going to assume that it's an accurate portrayal, as much as can, you know, be expected with a picture. But this is a picture that he drew of himself. I don't know why he didn't draw himself smiling, because I thought enlightenment was supposed to bring you to bliss and peacefulness. Isn't that the Buddha nature? You know, bliss, peacefulness, love. I mean, like you saw the monk on the video. He's like, ha ha ha, you know. Here's Hakuin, like, doesn't really make me want to be a Buddhist, but at least not a Zen Buddhist, at least not a Zen Buddhist of his school. Okay, moving on to Christian Science. Mary Baker Eddy, an American woman from Boston, or the region of Boston. When did she die? She died in 1910. Does anyone remember when she was born? Did anyone take a note on that? If anyone can find out, I might give an extra credit point for it. 1910. Obviously, I would say it was in the 1800s. I wanted to say 1828, but that sticks in my mind, but it's probably wrong. But correct me. What do we got? The birth of Mary Baker Eddy. When was she born? Anybody? Throwing out the point. Throwing it out. I'm looking for a fish. Now I have to look it up myself. I'll leave it out there. Sometimes you have to wait and be patient. Okay, I thought I would give some quotes from her work. I'm not going to go into all of her ideas because they covered them for the most part in general. Eddy was a Gnostic, is what I would say. My judgment will be that she's a modern day Gnostic, and I'll explain in a moment what a Gnostic is. But you can kind of see it in this statement, the scientific statement of being. So this is kind of like a short, again, it's kind of like the creed of Christian Science. I'm always looking for creeds, short pithy statements that can help me understand where people are coming from. And this is kind of it for Christian Science, for her group. There's no life, truth, intelligence, or substance in matter. So matter, the material world, is an illusion. Where have we heard that before? She was not a Hindu, as far as I know, and she did not know Hinduism, but this is what she arrived at. Matter is illusory. All is infinite mind. And I think that's kind of her word for God and how she conceives God, that God is mind. And everything is the infinite manifestation of mind. So everything is God. God is in everything. His mind is in everything. Spirit, which I don't think she means the Holy Spirit. I think she means more in the natural sense, the essential sense of just the non-material, the non-material, the non-physical. Spirit is immortal truth. So matter is not immortal truth. The physical world is not immortal truth. It's not infinite truth. Spirit is. To trust in matter is error. It's a mistake. It's a mind mistake. Right? And why does she think this? Because she realizes, and again, this is going to sound very familiar, and that's I'm wondering if that's not why they put these three religions together, at least Tibetan Buddhism and then Christian Science. Because again, you get the idea of impermanence. For Eddie, in her mind, the material is impermanent, it's changeable, it suffers, it dies. So the physical world does not exist. It does not have an eternal existence. It goes away. Our flesh rots off our bones, and then our bones turn into dust and stuff like that. We return into the universe, the stuff that we're made of. But the spirit for her, the soul, I guess you could also say, that continues forever. And because it continues forever, therefore, it must have superior value. I'm thinking about that, then I have to think more about that. Is that true? Why does it, just because the soul is eternal, does it have a superior value? I guess because it continues on forever and can experience many more things than matter can, which goes away. But that's just off the top of my head. So matter is erroneous, whereas the eternal spirit is truth. The spirit is the only real thing. So non-physicality is real, whereas matter is false. It's unreal. Now, God is immaterial. He is not physical in her mind. So God, and since, as they said in the video, it says in the Bible that man is made in the image and likeness of God, that must mean that human beings are, at their core, spirits and not really physical beings. So you might ask Ms. Eddy, or because I don't think she ever married, Ms. Eddy, yeah, but what is this? Why am I going to exercise class doing planks? You know what I'm saying? If, it's spirit and that's the truth. Yeah, I should just be able to say, hey, I am my ideal weight in my spirit, so get with it, body. Anytime now. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen with illness or sickness either. So, and then the kicker here, therefore man, and by man she means the generic man, human, that human beings are not material, human beings are spiritual. Okay, so that's the scientific statement of being. A little comment on this word science. Remember when I talked about this at the beginning of the course, and I talked about religious studies and the study of religion as a science. It is scientific, it is not science. Do you remember when I said that? Hopefully you do. And remember that science simply means knowledge. It comes from the Latin word which means knowledge. Scio, scire, scivi, scitum. Knowledge, science. So that's how I think she's actually using it. When she says the Church of Christ, or she calls her group, her community, the Church of Christ scientists, the image is not of Jesus, sitting over a microscope, looking at some slide of organic matter. No, that she doesn't mean like the hard sciences. I think she's using it in this broad sense of knowledge, because it is knowledge of this illusion that matter is really an illusion, and then the sickness that can be associated with matter, that these are really illusions. That knowledge will bring you healing, will heal you. So that's what I think is going on when she says it's a scientific statement of being, of existence, because there's no real science here. She's not talking about quarks or black holes or dark matter and stuff like that, or atoms. No, that's not, I think that's clearly not how she's using the word. She's using it, I think, in the broader sense of knowledge, knowing how things are. Page, Dr. Dunn. Oh, sorry about that. Anybody got the date for her? Yes, Ms. Don't tell me. Dunstan? No, I know it. I know it, but I have to look. I mean, I know it, but I can get it. Not Ms. Morgan. Ms. Morgan? No. It was Eppeheimer. Who's over there, right? Ms. Eppeheimer. No, Ms. Eppeheimer's there. I know. Well, anyways. Not Ms. Dunstan, not Ms. Eppeheimer. Ms. Gardner. I apologize. Ms. Kratz. No, she's not. Ms. Kratz. Sorry, Ms. Kratz. Okay. In my mind, I thought the name was higher up. Actually, it's in the middle. Okay, Ms. Kratz, you got it?
Yeah, it was 1817.
1817. Really?
I just had that she died December 3rd, 1910, and she was 93. So I couldn't know.
Because I have it down as 1821.
I don't know. I have 1893 in my notes. Maybe I did it wrong.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's you answered it. Someone check that. See if it's 1821. I thought it was 1821. Before I forget, let me write it down. Crafts. Oh, I have my pen right here. I thought I did. I have my pen. I would say 1821, but if someone can confirm that for me, then I appreciate it.
She was born July 16th, 1821.
July 16th, 1821. Who's that? Ms. Kisner?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Kisner.
And then she died in
Whoa.
1910.
Okay. All right, Ms. Kisner. But I'm only giving the point for the date of birth. I do appreciate the 1910. That I got. Okay. I don't have to go over her story because they already went over the story in the video. Her insight was that when she read the stories about Jesus, she seems to have seen that there was some kind of method or pattern to the way Jesus did healings. And since I'm not a Christian Scientist, I don't know what pattern that is. I would have to ask. If they'll even tell me, because I know they have a very kind of strict regimen or scheme for how people become members, and then you have this introductory period after several years, and only then will they start teaching you the healing methods. I don't know if they teach them to outsiders, but I could still try and look something up to see. But I think that she thought there was some sort of method or pattern that Jesus followed, that if it were followed in the same way, should bring about the same result, which would be healing. Healing actually of the physical body. Her book, as they told you, that's from the manual, her book was called Science and Health, but that's actually not the full name of the book. So I want to give you the full name of the book, because they should have really said that. I'm surprised they didn't give the full name of the book. It's Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Science and Health with Key why is that important to know? Because there's more to it than just she outlines her views, but she actually provides keys. She keys her teachings to various, I guess you could call them proof texts from the Bible that she's reading. And in her day, it was the King James Bible. And just a little interesting tidbit, apparently, that was the only Bible Christian scientists could use up until recently. Maybe 19, I'm trying to remember what I read, it was the 1970s, but certainly recently. For the longest time, that was the only real Bible you could use, because that's what Eddie used to get her keys to prove her doctrines. Okay? So a Christian scientist doesn't read the Bible, it has to read the Bible in a certain way. The person is reading it through the eyes and the lens that Eddie provides from her teachings. So certain scriptural texts mean what she says. The ultimate meaning is what she says they are. And as you can imagine, given her background and what she was trying to do, the keys revolve around healing and realizing that you are of a spiritual nature, and that by resolving any errors in your own mind about reality, that will resolve, i.e. heal, the errors, the illnesses that are showing themselves forth in your physical body. So she keyed each belief to a scripture in the Bible. So that whole title is necessary to know, I think. How many Christian scientists are there? Nobody knows, because they won't publish figures. In fact, it's in their manual. They have a manual which is kind of like their church laws, or how they're supposed to be governed. And it specifically states that they cannot tell anyone how many members they have. I don't think there's any sinister motive for that. I don't think they're trying to cover anything up. I think Eddie, because she wrote this manual, just felt that, you didn't want to brag, like if you had a lot of members, so you didn't want to brag about it. But also there are injunctions in the Bible, in the Old Testament, where God tells the Israelites that they're not supposed to conduct censuses of the people to count how many Israelites there are. So that also might be part of it, that she was taking that literally, like you're not supposed to count how many members you have. So anyway, so it's not definite. I mean, the number of Christian scientists ranges from 100,000 to 400,000, but I guess who knows? Who knows exactly? Without Gnosticism, I forgot to put that on the PowerPoint. Oh, poop. Well, anyways, this, you might have noticed already, and I've kind of pointed out, that there are overtones and connections to the Asian religions that we studied in class, Hinduism and Buddhism. And I don't know if she knew anything about those religions. I'm assuming she arrived at these realizations herself. But I mean, nothing is ever truly original. And once you study history of ideas or events or whatever, fashion, books, you'll find that most times, 9 times out of 10, what you think is truly original has been done before. And it's just, people just think they've rediscovered it. Or they've discovered it, but really they've rediscovered something. And I think she felt it was a discovery, but she was really discovering something that is a very old religious idea. And you find this in Christianity, you find this in other religions, this idea called Gnosticism. And it comes from the Greek word gnosis, long O, so it has a line over it. Gnosis. And gnosis means knowledge, again. To know something. Okay? It doesn't look really like science, which is from Latin, but interesting if you compare English, the English word, because we are cousin languages, Latin, Greek, and English, we're all from the same language family.
The K is silent, but it wasn't always silent. In medieval English, it would have said pronounced as kano. Kano, the K is not silent. It's only in modern English the K is silent, but it's still written, and it's still there. So gnosis, kano, right? Same meaning, knowledge. And Gnosticism is the belief that, by knowing something about the world, by knowing something about the world that you would arrive at its true reality. That knowledge is the key. Knowledge is the key to understanding what is real. And since knowledge is of the mind, which is spiritual, therefore spiritual realities reveal what is truly real. Physical realities do not. Physical realities are material, and as I've said before, and I'll say it again, they're changeable, they pass away, whereas the mind continues, maybe even into a next life in some religions. So knowledge and Gnostic religions, and there used to be Christian Gnostics 2,000 years ago, and Jewish Gnosticism, and you also find this in just about every religion, Islam and stuff like that. There are groups that kind of focus on, if I just have this correct knowledge of the way things truly are, that will allow me to control even the physical world. I'll have control over the physical world because the spiritual is superior to it. The spiritual lasts forever, like Eddie says in her scientific statement of being. So, what she really proposed was a form of Christian Gnosticism. I mean, it uses the trappings of Christianity, the Bible, Jesus, the belief in the Christian God, although she doesn't seem to say she believes in a Trinity, but she believes in God, Father, Son, and Spirit. But that seems to be about it. I couldn't find any sacraments. I looked in the manual that they have for how their rules and stuff like that, and there were sections about how their worship services were supposed to go and proceed, and one of them was called a communion service. So me thinking, oh, communion, I guess the bread and wine bit, they receive. No, I mean, the communion, there was no bread and wine. There was no remembrance of the death of Jesus or the Last Supper. The communion bit was after having some readings from the scriptures and having some readings from Mary Baker Eddy's writings and talking about experiences, especially healing experiences. The members kneel down and pray. Actually, they don't even pray, they commune. I guess they put themselves in the presence of the eternal mind that is there, which I guess is God. And that's their communion service. So there don't seem to be any sacraments at all, no baptism, no Eucharist, nothing like that. The focus is really on healing. Reality is spiritual, and the material world is an illusion. So where does illness fit in? I've averred to that already. Illness is really just mental error. Illness is not a body problem, it's a soul or spirit problem. If you have cancer, for example, it's not this massive reduplication of cells, in the body, which is destroying organs and destroying the body, because it shouldn't be doing that. It's basically cell division out of control. No, that's not the problem. It means that there is a major illness or error in your spiritual thinking somewhere, and that's what you have to identify. And by healing that, curing that spiritual problem, the cancer should go away. Without the help of medicine, it should go away. So the lack of health is really erroneous thinking, and it shows itself out in the body. Correct the thinking, and you'll correct the physical body. Okay, this is, I go off the scientific statement of being. This I got from the church manual that I've referred to, the church manual of the First Church of Christ, scientist in Boston, Massachusetts. That's its official name, but commonly members will refer to it as the Manual of the Mother Church. They refer to the First Church of Christ Scientist, founded by Eddy in Boston, as the Mother Church. And all the other churches, not really churches, they're called reading rooms,
places where you do go to read and study the teachings of Eddie, but they can also hold their quote unquote worship services. I'm using that term worship very broadly. But the mother church is the one in Boston. And man, the mother church has control. I mean, you might think like a pope or a Catholic bishop has control. No, the mother church has some big time control over the members. Like if you're a Christian Scientist, I mean, you can't give a lecture about Christian Science without calling up the mother church in Boston and asking for permission. And you have to tell them what you're going to talk about, how you're going to talk about it, and then you get their approval. You can't write a book about Christian Science without getting their permission. They'll sue you. They have sued people because you didn't get permission. So, there seems to be a lot of control, and Eddie had a lot of control because this church manual, the church manual of the First Church of Christ Scientists was written by her, and this is, notice the date, 1910, the 89th edition. The 89th edition, which means it went through 89 from the first. There were 88 different more iterations of this manual with all sorts of changes that had to be made or whatever, were made. And she died in 1910, and if I remember correctly, she started writing the manual in like the 1870s. So this was one busy woman. I mean, I can imagine that, apart from doing healings and stuff like that, she was spending all of her time writing and rewriting this manual. I mean, 89 or 88 different editions after the first one, man, all written by her. And there was an issue. This is the last edition from 1910. There have been no other editions since then. And there was a problem with it because she seemed to be a kind of controlling person, because in the manual there are all sorts of statements that, talking about how the Church of Christ Scientists is supposed to be organized, and at the end of the statement it says that any change or whatever has to be run through her first. She has to approve it specifically. Nobody else, no delegation, her. Okay? Well, okay, that's fine when she's alive. But remember, she gets sick and dies. Which also begs the question of, if she knew the patterns of how Jesus healed people, and she was teaching all these other people to do it, apparently she had success at it and performed healings, how was it that like a little touch of pneumonia did her in? Leave that to other people to decide on that. Nevertheless, she dies. So you've got this manual with all sorts of rules, all sorts of things written now in this case over 100 years ago, well over 100 years ago now, that you need to actually go and get Eddie's permission to change those rules. Otherwise, you're still bound to follow them. How do you do that? Well, that was a debate after she died. What are we supposed to do? Did the power devolve to the board of directors of the Church of Christ Scientists, or did it not? Did you still actually need the permission of Mary Baker Eddy, who was, in the cemetery? It's like, reminds me of something, yes? It reminds me of a similar incident that we learned about, where a person died without leaving a successor or any clear directives about how to elect a successor to interpret his will, yes? Here we have the same historical thing going on. Anyways, the whole thing went to court, and eventually it was decided that the position that the board of directors legally succeeded to her authority, to Eddie's authority after her death, that was accepted by the courts, and so that's fine. So the board of directors can take care of and intervene in those places where Eddie's permission was necessary. This is another creedal statement by Ms. Eddy, tenets. The word tenet is another word for creed, something you hold on to or that you have, beliefs that you have. Tenet comes from the word have in Latin. See if I can remember it. Teneo, tenere, Tenui teditum? No, that's wrong. Well, anyways, I know where it comes from. I just can't remember my Latin conjugations. Tenet. So you have these things. So these are the things that we have and hold. These are our beliefs of the Mother Church. And as you can see from what it says, that upon entering this community, you have to sign this statement saying that you accept these things. And I just wanted to point out one or two things about it, because on the one hand, it sounds Christian, but you kind of see this non-Christian idea of Gnosticism come through. Gnosticism, as I said, Gnosticism is big on knowledge and kind of denigrates or downplays the physical and the material world. And in some forms of Gnosticism, they even see that the spiritual worlds and the material worlds are enemies and at war with each other. And in some forms of Christian Gnosticism, the physical world was believed to have been created by an evil god or even the devil. And the spiritual world was created by the good God, stuff like that. I don't see that idea here, but I do see Gnosticism that, Jesus, she refers to Christ Jesus and their devotion to Christ. But what is Jesus? I asked this question. I was asking this question when I read this. Like, what is Jesus? He's the way shower. Okay, in section 4 here, he shows the way. Well, what is he showing the way towards? He's showing the way that she arrived at, which is that the spiritual world is real and that the physical world is erroneous. It's not real. And how did Jesus show this? By healing the sick and overcoming sin and death. Because through Jesus's mind, his union with the mind, the spirit, he was able to kind of rehabilitate the spirits of the people he healed. And by doing that, all of a sudden, the lame could walk, the blind could see, people who were insane became sane. Not because of any physical thing that Jesus did, but because Jesus was able to enter into their spirit and help them purify their spirit and make it whole again. So what are we to make of an action or actions like the crucifixion, Jesus' nailing on the cross and his rising from the dead? Are these real events? Well, for Eddie, maybe she thought they were real events, but the fact that Jesus' body died and that he came back, he didn't come back for her. He didn't apparently come back in a physical body. Ooh, so note the difference. It was not a bodily physical resurrection, because that would be Jesus coming back to error. The material world is error and not real. No, he comes back in the full reality of spirit. And so that's what the death and resurrection of Jesus mean for a Christian scientist. Jesus doesn't come back bodily in a body again. And I think I mentioned this during Christianity, or maybe I didn't. I thought I did. But the resurrection, you have to understand that rising from the dead was a very peculiar idea at the time of Jesus. People didn't think about it. I think I did mention it. It was kind of like we have today with watching zombie films. If you watch a zombie horror film, you've got these, these people who are dead, they're rotting, they're rotten, and yet they're still walking around coming after people, Even death is not a respite. Death doesn't bring peace because they're now walking around aimlessly as zombies. That's how people thought about if you came back from the dead. No one wanted to come back from the dead at Jesus' time. It was better to be dead. So the idea that, and when Jesus talked about rising from the dead, even to his fellow Jews, his fellow followers, they didn't know what he was talking about a lot of times. They didn't understand what he meant by rising from the dead. It was beyond their conception. Eddie seems to have that same view, to come back in the body that you had, this thing that is, heavy and, changes and feels pain. And well, of course, the resurrection body doesn't feel those things. It's a body, but it's a different one according to Christian teaching. But for her, it's better not to have that. So the resurrection is an indication of that. Understand eternal life, the allness of soul, spirit, and the nothingness of matter. Jesus did not come back in a body again. I thought this was, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a comic at heart or whatever, or a comic wannabe, but I just find some things funny. And religion has a lot of funny stuff in it that I just think is humorous. I'm not laughing at them, but I just think it's kind of interesting. Some of the things that religions every religion, even Christianity, my own, kind of value, and sometimes it can be odd. And this was just something in the manual of the Mother Church, the Golden Rule. This apparently, now remember, Eddy wrote this. Mary Baker Eddy wrote this. Apparently, she was getting pissed that too many people, I guess, were devoted to her and wanted to see her. I guess there were too many paparazzi hanging around outside her home. So she put this rule for her followers. This is the Golden Rule. Remember, the Golden Rule is supposed to be do unto others as you do as you would want them to do unto you. But this is her Golden Rule. No member, no Christian Scientist should haunt Mrs. Eddy's drive. I guess she was married. Should haunt Mrs. Eddy's drive when she goes out. So basically, like the old man saying to the kids, get off my lawn. When I come out in my carriage for my daily ride in my carriage, I don't want you people rabble there in my lane, in my driveway. Get out of the way. You should not haunt my drive like ghosts. Well, why shouldn't they? They're spirits. I mean, aren't ghosts spirits? And that's what it's all about. Anyway. I guess it's their bodies that she's worried about. Don't haunt my drive. Continually stroll by her house, what's Mrs. Eddy up to today? How many cripples did you heal today? Hey, yoo-hoo, little yoo-hoo and a holla. So don't stroll by my house. And this is a weird one. I don't know what this has to do with anything. Do not make a summer resort near her for such a purpose. Were they planning on building a summer resort? Or does it mean like people were during the summer times when it was nice out would set up outside her home to watch? I don't know. But this is a rule, you can't do it. Presumably, since she's now dead, this rule doesn't apply. So you're not, but I guess it could apply by extension to her grave. Don't straggle by her grave too much because, she's resting. She's resting. She needs her moment. Now, Jainism. Jainism is a fascinating little religion from India. And according to the most recent census done in the country of India in 2011, there were 4.5 million Jains, or Jains, it's also pronounced, in India. I don't know how many are outside of India. I would imagine not too many. So you could maybe push up the number a little bit, but I think 4.5 million is probably pretty accurate to the amount of people. It's a very old religion, even though it's still somewhat quite a small religion. It was started by, well, I shouldn't say that. It was brought to its completion, I should say, by this man Vardhamana. There were actually a number of teachers before him, 23 teachers, and he was the last, the 24th. This man Vardhamana. When did he live? Well, scholars think sometime in the 6th century into the 5th century, so sometime from 540 BC to 468. And I put traditional 6th century. I don't know why I wrote that on this PowerPoint. It's an old PowerPoint. So just note that his dates were 540 to 468. In the video, they call him Mahavira. And that's a title for him, just like Buddha is a title for Siddhartha Gautama. His name in life apparently was Vardhamana, but he is called the great hero. Maha means great, and Vira means a hero in Sanskrit. And so that's a title that was given to him, is given to him by Jains. He is Mahavira, the great hero. Why is he the great hero? Because, as I said, he's the one who brought the teaching of all the previous Jain teachers to completion, and preached the message, and I guess got the community established and started.
a real Jain community, whereas before, I guess, it was just different teachers doing their teaching thing, maybe having some students, but I guess with Vardhamana, he really kind of established and formalized it. Now, if you look at the dates, it's quite interesting. He was a contemporary, apparently, if the academic dates are correct, he was a contemporary of the Buddha. However, if that archaeological dig in Nepal is correct, well, no, because that was still 550. Yeah, if that archaeological dig in Nepal is correct, then, and the Buddha was really in the 600s, then they weren't contemporaries. But he would have been still not, it would have been existing not long after the Buddha. Nevertheless, his movement of Jainism, which was a protest movement against Hinduism of the day, just like Buddhism, was also an opponent of Buddhism. There was some friction with the Buddhists. How do we know this? Because in the Buddhist sacred writings, in the Buddhist scriptures, he is mentioned. He's mentioned as an opponent of the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so even though Vardhamana historically, we might find out, was not contemporary with the actual person of Siddhartha Gautama, aka the Buddha, nevertheless, his legacy, when he arises and starts preaching his message, the Buddhists see him as an opponent of the Buddhist teachings. And so you have debates between them in Buddhist literature. He was born so long ago, it's hard to as with any ancient figure, it's hard to reconstruct the exact details of his life. And even Jain accounts of the life of Vardhamana disagree. Some say he was married, some say he wasn't. Some say he had a miraculous birth like the Buddha. Others say no, just a normal birth. But anyways, he became a beggar. He went around begging and he became an ascetic, kind of like a wandering monk, you might say, begging for his food and seeking liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth. He was a Hindu as well. He was from India. What do I want to say about that? And after a period of time, he did achieve liberation and enlightenment. He received clear, unimpeded knowledge of the world. Again, this idea of knowledge. This is big in the Indian religions, receiving knowledge about the truth of reality. And so when that happens, because he was enlightened to the knowledge of what the universe is and what life is, he is now Mahavira. He's the great hero who has shown the way. He's a path maker. He's called a path maker. There's a particular word for it I'm not going to get into because I'm not delving too deeply into Jainism, but the group of teachers that he's in the line of are called path makers. They show the way, and he's the ultimate one, Vardhamana Mahavira. I also want to give you this word because it was mentioned in the beginning when the Jain man was talking. He said that Mahavira was a Jina, and it might not have been easy to tell clear what he said a Jina was, but a Jina, you have your definition here, means someone who is a conqueror. The word Jina means a conqueror, a victor, someone who conquers. Well, in his case, he conquered the cycle of death and rebirth. So he's referred to as a Jina. And I think he said that I think the guy did say there was nothing special about him. He's not a god, he's not a savior. And some religious studies scholars even classified Jainism and to some extent Buddhism as quasi-atheistic. Not that they don't have gods in Jainism, they actually do. Each one of the path makers, like Mahavira, Vardhamana, this is a picture of him, or of a statue of him. Okay, we don't know what he looked like, but this is a statue. They have like attendant gods with them. So there is this idea of gods in Jainism, but it doesn't seem like they really pray to them or worship them. They're just other levels of being. They're in India. You have to understand, like in Asian religions, especially like Indian religions, they're simply levels of being. They're gods, and they're gods. They're there. They're gods, and you're not. Okay.
the next level is a human, next level will be an animal, and going down the levels of being, you know, ghosts. At the bottom level will be demons, evil spirits. And so, yeah, there are gods, they're almost like guardian angels in a sense, guardian angel gods, if that makes any sense, who kind of, you know, help and are with the path maker, okay, who is a human being. And as they said in the video, people, even though it looked like people were worshiping, they were bowing down and prostrating themselves with their heads to the ground, and they were anointing, not necessarily with oil, but with like sacred paste and stuff like that, the heads of the statues. But as you said, they're really more honoring them, and they see them as exemplars and examples to follow, rather than actually gods that they're worshiping and praying to. Though, as with any religion, there's the theory and the practice, and sometimes those don't always go the same way. This is a picture that I found online, which I thought was helpful. I want to say anything more about that? Well, I'll mention that. Jains believe that all living things, all things that have a life force, are to be respected. This idea, and I think it was also mentioned in the video, this idea of jiva. Jiva. Jiva is a word which roughly translated means like the life force of a thing. If you want to think in materialistic terms, you can think of breathing, growth, okay? Hence, on the one end of the scale, the lower end of the scale, you have things like plants, like trees, because trees respire, they breathe, they're animate objects, they grow, okay? They lose their leaves during fall, they regrow leaves during spring, okay? So just looking at them for Jainism, they'd see, oh, that has jiva, as opposed to, say, a rock, which is just there, you know, doesn't grow, doesn't seem to change. That would be ajiva. It has no life force to it, okay? But as they mentioned in the video, the blades of grass, the guy said that you realize that everything has a life force, not just you, but even the blades of grass are living things. And so the whole purpose of not harming anything with a life force is that you're kind of harming yourself. We're all connected by this life force. And so you're kind of harming yourself, and by also harming that blade of grass, let's say, for sake of argument, you're harming other people because you're all connected to them. Now, while I was watching the video, maybe I shouldn't have thought this because I'm a bad boy. You know, I'm thinking to myself, you know, when they built that whole shrine, I mean, they had to clear away trees. I mean, I know Blairstown. I'm from that region. I mean, forest and stuff, and the blades of grass. I mean, they didn't have to dig up any grass to put all those shrines in. Dig the plumbing. It just all, I don't know, just appeared. I don't know, but anyway. So, I mean, that would be a question I'd want to ask. Not to be insulting, but just because it doesn't seem consistent to me that you're not to do violence to these things. But I'm sure they have guys come by and cut the grass, you know, and do them, you know, the guys come there on the, you know, you see them around, they're cutting the grass, they're trimming the bushes. Shouldn't you leave the bushes alone? Then we go up to other things with other life forces, and also senses as well. There are all sorts of categories here. A tree has the sense of touch. These have the sense, things like shellfish and snails have the sense of taste, apparently. Insects have senses of smell, all the way up to the highest level, the highest number of vitalities, or life forces, I guess, or jivas, is we have all of these, and so do elephants as well, and whales, and dogs, and other creatures. We have mind on top of all of that. We have mind. And so these are all part of the life force that is not supposed to be harmed, which is ahimsa, this word ahimsa that they mentioned in the video.
not harming, not causing harm, non-violence to living things. So yes, and I've seen this. I've seen Jains when I travels, and yes, people will wear masks so that you don't suck in an insect, especially. But also, you don't want to suck in. Now that we know about microbes, you don't want to kill a microbe. I don't know how antibiotics fit into that picture, but okay. But that's and very traditional Jains, like the monks and the nuns, the ones that have fully committed themselves, will walk around all the time, or almost all the time, with brooms. That's in fact one of the symbols of Jainism, is a broom, because they will sweep the path in front of them as they walk, so they do not step on anything living that has a jiva. Why are you doing all of this? Well, there is a purpose. It's not nonviolence for nonviolence sake, although, hey, I'm all for nonviolence and God bless them. It's a value. I think it's a good value. But karma, our old friend karma, Jains believe that karma is not cause and effect. They have a more literal, even physicalistic idea of karma. Karma is a substance. Karma is a substance, especially bad karma is a very heavy substance, and it weighs down the soul that is in the body. Ooh, maybe now I know why they did talk about Christian Science and when you unite these together. I seem to be seeing a theme here, that there's a soul that's imprisoned in this body, a physical body, and you want to release the soul to nirvana, to the place of bliss and peace, which is, for Jains, it's at the top of the universe. They think that once you are able to get rid of all this karma matter that weighs down your soul by doing nonviolence and good works, that helps to kind of shed off the heavy bad karma, which is weighing you down like a weight. Think of like weights people will wear when they're jogging or doing stuff to add extra stress and strain so they get a better workout. That's what bad karma is doing. But even good karma has a weight to it. It's not as heavy as bad, not by any means, but even good karma, you want to kind of try and get that away as well, so that there's no karma keeping the soul down, so that the soul is now free to float up to the top of the universe, where there is the realm of peacefulness and bliss and eternity. The best way to do this is through ritual starvation. They showed you the picture of the monks and the nuns. That's where they're going towards. That's ultimately, now many of them might die a natural death, but some of them, the ones who are really committed, will ask permission of the community. They'll go to the community and say, I feel that I'm ready to go. And so I want to stop eating, stop drinking, and prepare to be released from this body, this physical shell. And if they get permission from the community, then that's what happens. They ritually starve themselves to death. And people will visit them and attend to them like a hospice, but that's what they're trying. That's kind of like the more direct line to get up to nirvana. They call this practice samsara. And it is a controversial practice. I mean, several years ago, I was teaching a course, and I actually gave an extra credit on that to my students, not with this course, but another course I'm talking about, where, because one of the courts, it might have been the Supreme Court of India, actually outlawed the practice. They said, no, you can't commit ritual suicide. That's out of bounds, that's outside the law. And you had thousands upon thousands of Jains taking to the streets protesting. And they finally got it overturned, I think. But that's where it's going to. That's probably the most direct route. Now, the people that you see, the ones that I'm talking about, the people that they showed you in the video, the monks and the nuns were dressed up in white, but not so much the men. Because, where are you getting fabric from to make clothes? Plants. Do plants have jivas? Yes, they do. How do you get clothes from a plant? Well, you have to destroy it. You have to take, make thread. You can make thread from it. But cotton, you have to pick the cotton. You have to, destroy the plant effectively. You have to rip it out of the ground and to make cotton. So the more traditional Jains do not wear clothing. They go around naked all the time. These are called the Digambars or Digambara. They are clothed by the sky. They are clothed with air. Or sky-clad. They are sky-clad, clothed with the sky. And here's our Digambara friend who thankfully has decided to be, a little bit modest and not show us the full Monty. Thank you, my Jain friend. Now, apparently the nuns do not go around naked, but in temples you might see them all naked, okay? And usually when they go out in like here, if they were here, they probably would wear clothing when they go out, but maybe in the temple, if you showed up, the monks and the nuns would be fully naked. They would not be wearing any clothes. But there is a less traditional group, which is also Jain, which is called white clothed or white clad, because they will wear clothing. They will wear a white linen or fabric garment just to cover up the nakedness. And so they are called Shvetambara or Shvetambar. Other than that, they pretty much agree on Jain teaching. There isn't that much of a great of a difference. The most noticeable thing will be that naked versus not naked. But there are some ideas that are quite different. Like once a person becomes a Jina, once a person becomes enlightened, Digambars don't think you need to eat anymore, which is where the starvation comes in. Shvetambars will say, yes, you're enlightened, but you still maybe should eat. You still kind of need to keep up the appearance of eating. Notice they also disagree about females. And females are not equal with males. A man can reach enlightenment for a Digambara, but females have to come back again as a man in the next life to attain liberation. Shvetambars disagree with that. They say whether male or female, everyone can receive liberation. Oh, and just to show you, yes, I went to the place in Blairstown years ago and took these pictures. Thought you might be interested in them. I will point out to you, they are not Nazis. This is a good luck symbol in India. The Nazis stole it from India and then made it something evil in the eyes of the world. But if you go to India, you will see swastikas all over the place. It doesn't mean they're anti-Semites or they're Nazis. It's just a good luck symbol. So they put it on the wall there. I would point out to you some of the things. Like think about going to a Catholic church. When's the last time you went to a Catholic church and someone told you oh no, you have to wear, if you're a girl, you have to wear sleeves. You can't show your shoulders. You male or female, you can't wear shorts. You can't show your legs. No, you can't wear that t-shirt. Not often that I know of, but if you go into one of their temples, they have all sorts of rules for you to show respect. Not just for the people there, but if you're an outsider. So all sorts of things like food, not having food. You can't have leather items. So no leather belts, no leather shoes, because they're made from an animal, which is violence. Okay? You can't touch certain things. You have to be very careful. And I didn't go around touching stuff. I tried to be respectful as I knew, because I'm not Jain. Okay, well, I just want to point that out. God bless you all. Remember, there will be a Zoom on Thursday. Check the announcements where I will talk about the final exam. Anyone who wants, it's not obligatory. If you want to come, great. If you don't, I'll be talking about the final exam and what's going to be on it. Oh, people are coming in. Okay. I don't know if you were able to check your email yet.
I did, I saw it. I
Okay.
appreciate it, thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and I appreciate you talking to me. Yeah, just, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Just what I said in the
Yeah.
email. So I looked over stuff and reconsidered certain things that I could see your point of view on. So
All right, thank you.
you're welcome, miss.
I'll see you soon.
See ya.
Yeah, I can do that, can I? Oh, wait, go back. Okay, ending. I'll be back.